In this tutorial, we're going to create a fake database from scratch using Fabricate. Let's create an events database with event names and attendees. Let's give our database a name. We'll call it demo. And we can pick a target database type. CSV is the most versatile. You just export as CSV files, but you can also target specific database platforms as well, and there's more coming here. The most common way to start with Fabricate is if you have an existing database and you have the create tables script, the DDL SQL for that database, you can just paste it here and Fabricate will automatically derive all the tables, columns, and relationships for you. But today we're just going to create the database from scratch manually so that we can explain each concept as we go along. On the left, you'll have your database tables. We don't actually have any yet. We just have an empty database. You can click here to create a new table. You can click here to import data from CSV as a table. Once you've got your full database modeled, you can click here to generate all the data for that database and download it. If there are any database generation routines in progress, you can access them here. If you want to write arbitrary SQL against your database just to check things, you can do that here. If you need help, click here. And if you want to switch databases or create a new database, click here. Let's create our first table and let's call it events. I could just describe what I want in the AI prompt here, or I could create columns manually. So let's do that for now and we'll revisit this feature later. Let's add our ID column, and it automatically guesses the first time you're creating a column for a table, it assumes it's going to be called ID, and it applies the number generator with an auto increment distribution because that's a very common pattern. Let's open up generator here and have a look at the different types that Fabricate allows us to generate. So you'll see things that are very domain specific, like ICD codes and cars, airports, animals, etc. And then you'll also see things that are very generic, like UUID or number in this case for IDs. Fabricate has a large list of different data types that it can generate, but you can also create your own, and we'll see that in a moment. So let's add our number column. You can see that it generated 100 numbers from 1 to 100. If we wanted to change that and say we only want like 50 events, we could do that here. Now it's only generating 50. Let's go and add our name column. So there's no events generator in Fabricate. There's only so many domains that it knows about. And so oftentimes you'll find that you need to create your own generator, so to speak. And you can do that with the list generator. So if I had a specific set of event names, I could type them in here, but I don't. And so let's use the AI assist to generate some reasonable values for us. Let's say like 20 corporate event names. Okay, that looks good. Let's hit save and close. And now we have our events. All right, so you notice I said 20 corporate events, but it's generating 50 rows. So that's not exactly what we want. Right now it's just picking a random event name for each row in this table, but we actually want this to be kind of the lookup table for events. So we want to only use each name once. And the way that we do that is change this setting to unique values of, and then pick the name column. And now it's just going to use each name once in order. Let's add a start date and an end date for each event. For start date, let's use the date time column. The defaults are fine. It defaults to between today and a year ago. And for end date, let's do the same thing. End date, date time, save. All right, you'll notice a problem here. Look on row 2. The end date is before the start date. So that doesn't make any sense. We wouldn't want that in the real world. So let's change how we generate end date. And instead of using date time, let's use the SQL generator to derive the end date from the start date. If you know the SQL formula for that, you're better than I am at SQL. I don't remember it, so let's just use the AI assist to write it for us. Let's say between 0 and 3 days after start date as a date time. All right, so now we have our end dates are either the same date as the start date or up to 3 days after the start date. So that's the relationship we want. Now let's go create the attendees table. And we can use the AI assist to create all the columns at once. I'm just telling it what we want. So let's say a table of people with ID, full name, and email. Okay, so it created an ID column using the auto incrementing number, and then it created full name and email columns. And you'll notice that the email automatically is derived from the full name. And the reason that is because both have this person group key. So if I open, for example, full name, you can see it uses the person generator, the full name field, and assigned a group key of person. So any fields that share the same group key in Fabricate will automatically be correlated. So it will pull the email address from the same record that it's pulling the full name. And that's how we get our email address matching up with the full name. So you can see when I go into email here, it also has the person group key. Now let's create our foreign key to tie the attendees back to events. So in order to do that, we can create a column, let's say event ID. And because we named our column ending in _ID, it automatically guesses that what we want is a foreign key, and it picked the events table and ID column. You could change those if those were wrong, but in this case, they're right. And let's say that we want between 1 and 10 attendees for every event. So we want to select this option, which is base the number of rows in this table on this foreign key relationship. Click here, and then we can establish a cardinality. Let's say randomly we want between 1 and 10 attendees for every event. So that's how we do it. We can also say, for example, if we wanted a fixed distribution, say we want like exactly 1 attendee for every event or exactly 10, something like that. Or we could say normal distribution where the mean would be 5 attendees for every event with a standard deviation of 2, something like that. But in this case, let's just use uniform between 1 and 10. All right, so here it's for every value in the events ID column, it's created a random number of attendees between 1 and 10 for this table. And you can see in the rows up at the top, it's telling you that it's between 1 and 10 for each event ID. So now we have our full database. Let's go and export that to CSV. And let's go have a look at the files. Okay, so here's the attendees file. It generated 89 rows in this case. So if you hit export again, it might generate a different number of rows. It's random each time, but it's based on the cardinality that we set up, which is between 1 and 10 attendees for every event. And here's our events table. So it's going to be, because this is based on a static list, it's going to be the same number of events every time, but with random start and end dates that, again, meet our business logic where the end date is derived from the start date. So that's a quick overview of how you can generate a fake database from scratch using Fabricate. Thank you.